this is where many people fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Because life hadn't prepared them for it. It's the love of music, it's the language of the heart that we embraced from a young age. And that was us, that was tattooed on our souls, you know. And it was surreal. I forgot to play the guitar for the entire song. I looked around and there was Stevie Wonder being led to the front of the stage with a microphone. My records gave me the English lesson, the history lesson, the geography lesson, the lesson in humanities. That was my Bible.
Bluey, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
It's a huge, huge pleasure for me. You know, I grew up sort of in Ireland, but then came to the 80s as a musician grew up in Dublin, should I say, in the 60s, but then came to London in the 80s, and when, you know, you were starting out with acid jazz and the whole scene, and it's kind of like a part of the soundtrack of my life, really. So sitting here with you is a great pleasure, and I loved so much of your music, and I mean, you must sometimes even think yourself, like, how did it end up here? How did all these so amazing things happen to you?
In this amazing place where we are today, you know, this place soaked in music. But the journey, you've made it and I've made it. It's the love of music. It's the language of the heart that we embraced from a young age. And that was us. That was tattooed on our souls, you know. We had no other way but to follow that river. And here we are.
So you came over when you were 9, didn't you, from Mauritius, where you grew up?
That's right.
9, you came to London. I mean, sort of 9, that was what, 1969, was it maybe, when you came to London?
Around 69.
So London was a very different
68,
place.
69.
Well, it was a very different place in the 60s. Like, yeah, it was full of music and wonderful sort of movements, but it was also quite a scary place. I mean, there was a lot of...
Scary. For me, it was more... It was a blessing and it was hell at the same time. And I learned very quickly that this was going to be the place that was going to make my dreams come true. I've always known what I was going to do in life since I was 5 years old. My earliest memory of planet Earth told me that I was going to be a musician because I saw other musicians play and how they transformed people that were broken, you know, and people that were tired, and they would be dancing in no time at all. So coming to England, I realized that this was a place that was going to facilitate that. But at the same time, it was scary because, you know, people weren't used to having different races on their doorsteps. And it was increasing and increasing, and people... they react to that when it comes down to my life is not so good, so why are you here? And this was tough.
Because it was like the signs at the time, on the doors, like no blacks, no dogs, no Irish.
Yeah.
I think that's why I've always got along with with other black musicians, and kind of related more to them, dare I say, than I did to the white musicians, because we were like the outsiders, as you guys were the outsiders. I spent a lot of my time down in West London and hanging out with Jamaicans, and it just, that felt more home to me. I didn't really connect with that middle class white thing at all, or even the middle class, or even the working class white side. If I'm being honest, it was that just, I didn't connect with that, and there was that racism. But you guys got it, like black guys got it a lot worse than white guys in the sense.
I think what it is it's everywhere. It was always going to be, wherever you go in the world, it was going to be there. But at that point, there was also this other thing. Like I said, it was hell, but it was also felt like it was heaven, because I'd meet people who were very soulful, and they would introduce me, or they would take care of my mum when we had no money. So the neighbor would kind of bring sandwiches around, and and offer her a little night job doing some sewing or something, so she'd have a third job and would be able to eat. So there was always acts of kindness. In this world, that always balances it. And for me in London, there was also a lot of acts of kindness. There was a teacher Bob Wilson, in those days, footballers used to take gym classes or run a pub. They weren't just full-time footballers. They had part-time jobs. And Bob Wilson, the Arsenal goalkeeper, worked in my school, and he taught me how to be a goalkeeper just to save me from getting a beating.
Wow.
Because no one wanted to play in goal, and they'd stick me in goal, and when I let in a goal, they'd come along and thump me or kick me in the ass. So Bob showed me how to be a goalkeeper, and when I left school, I had a choice of actually following a football career, because I was a good enough goalkeeper to kind of sign for Watford Boys. But in the end, I never grew any taller than I did. But back to the original conversation, acts of kindness and acts of love, and these acts were littered in my life along the way, along the path. And in London, I found a lot of that.
That's the one thing I found fascinating about doing my due diligence. Like so many moments in your life, it came to that precipice, and like you needed someone, just one person to be there for you, and they were. There was a moment, there was a serendipitous thing happening, like just when it could all go horribly wrong, something pulled it back and you were back in the game. And I understand that as well, because that's the same. I think it's the same when you're working class. I was working class Irish, you're working class black guy and living in London. It's kind of, you need those people in your life to kind of look out for you just once in a while.
You need it. I remember I was at boarding school after leaving Holloway, and I got my school report, and I remember reading my school report and thinking, how can I show this to my mum? This devastated me. And within seconds of me reading the fact that the English teacher had written, the English language is wasted on your son, he will amount to nothing, And I was crying, and I was reading it, and my art teacher came by, put his arms around me, and said, what's up? And I showed him the report. He says, she's wrong. So you're going to amount to something, because I already know. I heard you write a song, the song that you wrote yesterday. You were playing it under the tree, and I was behind you. You don't even know. And I was shocked. The two, The devil and the angels have always been...
It is like angels, isn't it, these people? And I'm not a religious person, but they do... I've had them as well littered through my life. And I was thinking about it recently, and I do admire reading a lot of stuff recently where you kind of tip your cap to these people, and things I've read. And I think that's important too. Like there was a guy I knew back in Dublin when I was an apprentice electrician. I've told this story before in the podcast, where I'll shorten it this time. But basically, I used to go to his house, and he had a huge record collection, and he used to just love. I didn't learn anything about electricity, but he was teaching me about reggae, soul, punk, everything. And he had this fantastic collection. And to this day, I'd love to go back and thank him, because he changed my life. He gave me a broader perspective, because this is the days before streaming. You had to learn from other people.
Oh, yeah,
it had to be handed down. You couldn't really discover it on your own, bar going to record stores. But I knew all the record store guys, and they used to put stuff aside to me. Because that was the other thing I was thinking in your life that kind of glues it together, is like record stores.
Yeah, I was a manager in a record store, so on Tottenham High Road, and from the moment that my maths teacher changed my life, or I knew what my life was going to be, but opened up those vital gates for me by playing me Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye on a 7-inch, and giving me a guitar and saying, can you jam to this? And I immediately picked up the riff, and he said that that he knew that I was going to be able to have a musical career, even though I didn't have any musical lessons. So the record, having that record thing was, to me, that was the first record that somebody had actually played for me. I didn't in Mauritius. We didn't have a record player. We just had the radio. So that was the first time somebody actually took our record and put it in front of me and actually put it on. And I knew that this was going to serve me, and I was going to have to serve this industry, this disc thing, you know? And having a record shop and having DJs come along and hang out and play music and start bands from the record shop, because
you started light up the world from there.
Musicians would come by to buy records, and we would go at the back in the back room and jam. But the record thing was very, very important, because I was already collecting records from that moment, and my record collection was as wide as my spirit would allow me to be. So I had folk music, I had jazz music, I had funk music, I had good metal music, you know, whatever was good.
Yeah, there's only two types of music, isn't it? Good and bad.
Good and the bad.
Yeah.
And it was the classes that I missed because I was running away from skinheads. You know, my records gave me the English lesson, the history lesson, the geography lesson, the lesson in humanities. You'd find that was my Bible, that was my blueprint for life.
So that record store, isn't it? The story goes, legend has it, that some guys turned up at the store, and you know, you kind of started like with some instruments, and
you went sax case, trumpet case. Yeah, you guys play. Yeah, I play too. Let's go in the back and have a jam. And I thought I was a bass player at that time. And I thought, great, I'm in a band, I'm going to be in a funk band, you know. It's like at that time listening to Average White Band and following bands around London. And suddenly I was jamming. They dropped the bomb on me. They said, we've already got a bass player. Oh, no.
Play some guitar.
But he's 14 years old. And I thought, oh, no, I'm back in. He's only 14. He can't be any good. And it was to this day, sadly, is no longer with us. In the top, I've worked with Marcus Miller. I've worked with Mark King. I've worked with a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the top 5 bass players ever, and he was at the age of 14. He was one of the best bass players in the world.
Wow. So you were playing guitar then, didn't you? I think you played guitar in the band.
Then I said I also play guitar.
So, and then that was the start of Light of the World, wasn't it?
Yes,
yeah, so
that's right.
The beginnings,
right.
the seed, and you obviously heard that kid playing bass. He was amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we got something here.
Yeah.
You have that lightning bolt moment.
Yeah.
All right, this is working. You know, don't you? You're in the room, and you kind of like, oh, the magic just happens.
You know, if the truth smacks you in the face and you don't adhere to it, you're a fool.
But it kind of it's tinged with sadness, that story as well, isn't it? Because you had a percussion player that was working with you at the time as well.
You know your stuff.
Well, I try, but I just feel there's a great book, there's a great film in your life, because it's just all these twists and turns, and I was fascinated by it. But he passed away, and that really knocked you back, and you kind of stepped back from the music industry for a while and got an ordinary job.
Yeah, I went to work in McDonald's. And then I went from there to a dressmaking factory in the East End of London, all the time trying to hide from people that may recognize me. But a guy called Johnny Rocker recognized me because at lunchtime I was still drawn to that record shop in the East End of London.
Record stores again.
And he was working in this record store, and he said, "You're Bluey from Light of the World." I said, yeah. I'm working in the dress factory there right now, and I've got a little boy just born. And he said, we should have a jam. We should I'm trying to put a band together. And of course, it's like when your calling has been music since you was 5 years old, and you try to put it on hold, it's not long before somebody tempts you. And the apple was too tempting. That little snake, Johnny, he got me, and we formed Freeez.
And then Freeez went on to Incognito after that, didn't it? I think.
That's right.
So how long did Freeez last for?
My Freeez went on for a few years, 2 or 3 years before breaking up. But I was in the very first 3 or 4 releases.
Okay, so and then. I mean, obviously the big track that changed everything was the Jocelyn Brown track. I mean, that was probably the one that really made a global difference.
Yeah, that was early 90s.
91, I think, was it? Or
That's right.
Like that, yeah. And that was a huge track. I mean, I remember clearly like it was yesterday myself when that track came out. The vocal was just incredible. That was like one of the... I think the thing I always loved about Incognito was that you always knew it was going to be top drawer.
Yeah.
Everybody was on top of their game.
Well, it was a serendipitous moment because it was a moment that was meant to be like many things in my life. Mm-hmm. It's not meant to be something is taking you in a different path.
Sure.
But then it is the thing that happens that makes you, that sets you on your way.
Sure.
And we'd been playing a weekend, what they call Soul Weekenders.
Yes, I remember
UK.
the Soul Weekenders, yeah.
Charles Peterson had just signed me based on a couple of demos I'd done, mainly by myself and with the little BBC computers and some live instruments.
And just getting onto Giles was like he was a real cheerleader of acid jazz, wasn't he? Like,
yeah, he was the one that coined the phrase acid jazz.
Yeah, sure.
And he formed this label with Talking Loud with Universal, and
so he heard this track.
I managed to kind of scramble my way into there for a release. We'd done the album. The album was complete. We're playing this weekender. He's in the room next door. We're just finishing. He comes as we're finishing our set. He comes running up to the side of the stage and goes, "Whoa, that version of Always There is killer." And the crowd's still screaming and they're shouting, "Always there, always there, always there." So we have to go. He said, "Go back out and play it again." So we go back out and we play it. And he suggests to me straight away, grabs me and he said, "Got to go back in the studio. I'm booking the studio first thing on Monday morning. Go in the studio and record it." By Monday morning, our lead singer that had been sang the song that night, she had some kind of tonsillitis, and she had no voice. I said, Giles, we've actually laid down the track, but we're going to have to wait for her to get better. He said, no, let's get a singer on it. Jocelyn Brown is in town. And I said, what, the Jocelyn Brown or some girl from South London called Jocelyn Brown? And he said, no, she's here from America. She's here for doing some gigs. And she came to the studio, the rest is history. First take.
Oh, it was amazing.
15 minutes she spent in the studio doing that.
And that was the kind of whole start, that full-on gospel kind of belter voice, you know what I mean? It was kind of, that started a whole string of other artists after. That was groundbreaking.
But also there was two groundbreaking moments on that record. It was the fact that Jocelyn Brown came and sang the vocal take of that song, any version of that song. Because it had been done before by Ronnie Laws and Side Effects. But that voice on there, it's like...
Yeah, it was amazing.
But the remix by David Morales...
Yeah, it was brilliant as well. It's fantastic.
It just gave it a twist. And the thing is, I'd come out through the clubs, the records, supplying DJs with music. Chris Hill signing Light of the World, DJ.
Sure.
Charles Peterson now signing Incognito, DJ again. So that whole world of club and live music, this is where I belong. This is where, that was what I was meant to, that was what I was cut out for in this
planet. It's like the stars aligning completely.
Totally. So when I heard that remix, I thought, well, here's my career. Because
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way because this is going to be a #1 worldwide in clubs. In clubs,
yeah.
I had no doubt. Now it was just how I was going to benefit from the fact that this was a club track and I shouldn't be pushed into just making club music. Stay on my jazz, funk, soul path, tell my stories and build up on that success. This is where many people fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Because life hadn't prepared them for it. They take a moment like this and they don't know what to do after a moment like this. I knew exactly what to do because life had been preparing me for a key to open up another door. But many other doors were ahead of me. Mm-hmm. And this was my opportunity. This was the big one.
And you grabbed it.
Grabbed it.
Good for you.
Don't you worry about a thing. No, no, no. Don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry. 'Cause I'll be standing on the side when you check it out. Yeah, yeah. Everybody needs a chance to check out the new. You're the only one who sees the changes you take yourself through. Don't you worry about a thing. Oh, don't you worry. Oh, 'cause I'll be standing on the side when you check it out. When you let your trip, don't you worry, don't you worry, don't you worry.
You were contemporaries at the time. You had brand new heavies and you had The Influence and even Jamiroquai. And were you aware of these people? Were you friends with them?
I remixed Brand New Heavy's first single when they were there. Jan Kincaid was the singer on the original version of the song that I mixed. I worked with The Influence. I wrote one of the songs for them. So
I know Kwame very well.
Kwame has a studio next door to mine.
You know, I used to have a studio next door to mine. I used to have a studio in a place called Jamestown Studios, where was in Whitechapel, and they were my neighbours. So Kwame, because I had my own little production room.
I remember that. That's where I recorded.
Oh my God!
Running Away.
Well, the guy, funny of Kent Brainard, the American guy who built it, he sadly died a few years ago.
Yeah.
But he was an amazing guy. It's an amazing place.
Yeah, with those little doors with a round...
Yeah, like the portholes.
Portholes,
yeah. I had one of those rooms.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of met loads of people that... I was saying earlier on in the conversation before we started, it's like we've a lot of people we know together. Like, I worked with Joy Rose. I worked with, actually, your Joy as a singer.
Yeah, she's here tonight.
I know, I can't wait to see her. And it's just so funny. And then even I was watching a video of you singing You're In My System, you know, which is a tenuous link. But I know David Frank, who wrote that really well. I worked as his engineer for about 5 years. You know, I mean, he was writing all these songs.
The further we dig, the more we'll realise we're connected, we're brothers.
Yeah, it's a funny
Brothers
thing,
in
isn't it?
arms.
That's kind of like... that, you know, it's a small industry.
Yeah,
and
you worked in where 100 Degrees and Rising was my biggest record. You worked in probably in that room where I recorded the strings at Abbey Road.
Yes, all of those.
For many years.
Yeah. It's the energies, and it's wonderful. Like when you doing this kind of podcast series, it's been amazing. Kind of, you know, meeting people and the journey, and literally everybody I've met, there's some link somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's just, I mean, I bet if you met like Whitesnake tomorrow, there'll be somebody. There'll be, you know, it doesn't matter. It's we all connect.
I wrote some film music with Bernie Marsden.
Well, I was in Bernie Marsden's band. I
signed to Swan-Yard. We were both signed to Swan-Yard.
Oh, that's so mad. I spoke to Bernie yesterday. He's not well at the moment.
Really?
But he's having some health issues.
Give him my love.
I will. I'll be speaking to him tomorrow.
I'll give you my number. You can connect us.
You know, because basically we were trying to get...
I'm sorry to hear that.
Trying to get Billy Gibbons. He was in town yesterday, and we're trying to get him on the show. And he said, "I'll get on to Billy. Don't worry, I'll give Billy a call." Anyway, it didn't happen. But Bernie was hugely important to me coming to London, because I was in a band in Ireland and called Sweet Savage, a rock band, a metal band. And then basically he heard me singing, and then he left Whitesnake and he flew me over to join his band as a singer.
Oh, wow.
So it's all Bernie Marsden's fault for all my enemies out there, why I'm in the UK. But you know, I'm still in and then funny enough, I was in his band for years, and then we kind of went our separate ways, and then 20 years later I produced his record at Abbey Road. I brought him into Abbey Road, and we did his record in Studio 3. So it's all these links. It's wonderful, really.
It's a big but a small place.
So you worked with Bernie. That's incredible. So obviously, Always There, huge hit. I mean, what was the next part of the journey after that?
I always knew that if I could have... I watched how bands... One of the things that I did was I was good at watching people watching.
Right.
So when I'd see all these bands that was coming through, like Gonzalez, The Average White Band, FBI, I was watching which ones were having success with their career as opposed to just that record, how they were moving. And Average White Band went to America.
Well, you know, Hamish is a really good friend. Hamish was here about 2 months ago.
Hamish and I are brothers. I've written...
I'll tell him as well. I'm going to be speaking to him tomorrow.
We co-written. He's featured on Incognito. I've co-written for his album.
That's amazing.
It's a small world.
He's such a beautiful man.
But Hamish remembered me from hanging out with Average White Band when I was a teenager.
Wow.
You know, kind of coming to the shows, grabbing hold of something from the van, like a drum or something, and going downstairs and at the Hope and Anchor or something to go. So we connected. But I watched how America was an important place to further develop careers as opposed to just giving, you've got a musical break and now you're in the UK, you have to move with the times, you have to change your sound. I wanted to retain my sound. I recognized that when you hear down, 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 that's a Santana record, that guitar sound, you know, the congas, the Latin influence, that's their sound. You know, here, you know, you hear like those horn hits of Earth, Wind and Fire. You know that's Earth, Wind and Fire. I wanted to make a sound that would take us to America.
Right.
And I thought it was going to be one really funky track, but it ended up being a ballad that I wrote. And it became, without releasing it as a single, Deep Waters became the gates to what would later become smooth jazz
Yeah.
as a vocal track. They didn't play vocal tracks much, but I wrote this track called Deep Waters,
Great
based
track.
on Mesa's life story and what she was going through in the studio. It was actually a letter that I wrote to her, and I turned it into a song 5 minutes before giving it to her.
Wonderful.
And this opened up the doors, and I recognized that America was going to be the place that was going to give us longevity. And I had one more ace up my sleeve, and that would be the next phase. So we succeeded with having this record in America, but I'd always dreamt. I remember reading the Melody Maker sounds, and one of the things that always struck me was when people toured Japan. Traffic at the Budokan, Santana Lotus recorded in Japan.
Yeah.
These things were really important. I would read the review at the gigs, and I would hear people talking about, we went to a ramen shop and we traveled through the countryside and saw the cherry blossoms. And I envisaged, because records was my way of traveling prior to me being able to physically travel.
Yeah.
I wrote a tune called Marrakesh, and I was invited by the king and the prince to play in Morocco because I'd written a song called Marrakesh based upon me hearing Marrakesh Express by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and started to read about Morocco and dreaming and created a fantasy track.
Wow.
So music allowed me to travel, but I knew that I had to make the physical journey at some point. So when I got my first publishing deal, I laid it upon my family and my managers, none of which were very happy that I was spending my publishing money not on living, but on taking my band to Japan.
Wow.
Because the record company weren't prepared to support that. They felt that it didn't have legs. And that was the making of my career to this day, the biggest step that I ever took. In taking that money, taking the band to Tokyo, playing a small club, arriving there, mesmerized and totally mind blown at being there. It's been the place that's managed to feed my soul,
Sure.
but at the same time feed my family and give them an education and set them on the way and put roof over our heads.
So, there's so much detail we could dig into here, but time being as it is, Chaka Khan, one of my heroes, and like vocal heroes. So, how did the whole connection happen? I've read stuff, but I'll let you tell the story. But I have done it's an amazing story as well.
When the first Rufus record came out, my cousin gave me it as a present, and I had the picture on the wall at school of this bushy-haired girl that I'd fallen in love with, whose voice seemed to me to have no bounds. The other person whose voice had no bounds was Stevie Wonder. Mm-hmm. The trilogy of Innervisions, Fulfilling Its First Finale, and Talking Book, that Bible.
Sure.
Mantra, My Chant, those records. So I've always believed in dreaming hard and believing that your dreams will come true. It's happened to me since I was a child. So why not? One day I hope to work with Chaka Khan. One day I hope to work with Stevie Wonder. Oh, dream on, most of my mates. But this is exactly what happened. When I did Don't You Worry About a Thing, I met Stevie Wonder. He came on stage, sang it with us.
Amazing.
And became a friend. Would call me in the middle of the night, and I would say, with putting on an English accent, and say, I'd swear at him thinking it's my bass player. Then realized it was Stevie. Same thing happened with Chaka Khan. I dreamt about working with Chaka. She came to town, TV show. She asked for a backing band. They suggested us. We went, became friends, and I've written and recorded with her, toured with her as her backing band, being Incognito as her backing band in Europe and in Japan and in Saudi Arabia. It's been like that ever since. And the same thing with George Duke, same thing with Marcus Miller, same thing with George Benson, you know, who is a dear friend.
He's a lovely man. I've met him a few times.
Dear friend.
He's
You know,
a beautiful
Al
man.
Jarreau. The list, I fulfilled all the dreams that were really important to me. And but I'm still dreaming, so there's a lot more on the way.
I mean, I was, as I said, going through your discography, and as a fellow producer, like, I should just give up and go home. It's done everything, and it was just so amazing. Because again, going back, repeating myself, like, you're part of the soundtrack of my life, and it was like all those songs. I can remember them really super clearly at the time. Like, even now, I can remember where I was, and you know, I was staying in this. I had this flat in Paddington, this little tiny dumpy flat, but I can kind of remember where I was, the imagery, you know, the kind of cinemagraphicness of London, you know, at the time. And I think that's kind of what your music creates for me. It's kind of cinematographic. So
Music
when
should
I
be the
hear it, I
soundtrack.
see images and I see time, you know, like a movie. And that's kind of how I process, especially most music, but especially your music.
That's totally. I mean, I don't think there's a better way to explain it than the way that we love music, the way that it belongs in our life, the way that it lives in our lives.
Yeah.
It's the soundtrack of our lives, you know. It's like think of it as a film that's being made, which is why I like making edits. I like going back and watching the old ones, you know, the old parts of my life, like the band Strata that I have with Giles Peterson, which has become the biggest thing that I've got at the moment, bigger than Incognito.
Well,
You know, STR4TA. Who thought that Bluey was going to be in Grand Theft Auto? You know, it's like Strata during pandemic, bang. Inner Shade, Citrus Sun, the various projects that I have, all open doors and all doing it. An Incognito flagship. Just finished a new album that I've never been happier in being in a recording situation than I've been with these new young girls that's just joined the band.
fantastic.
So there's a lot of joy, and there's a lot of hunger that I think if the hunger stopped, then it would end.
I remember reading about you doing Transatlantic RPM, is that the album? Yeah. Obviously you got Chaka Khan on that record. And you kind of went back old school, kind of making that record, sort of sitting, rather than you just coming in and playing chords and telling everybody what to do. It was a very collaborative effort.
Yeah,
It was
jamming.
a kind of a different, back to the old school jamming and trying to figure out ideas, so everyone's kind of contributing to
That's right.
the process. So was that a real joy to do?
Yeah, and I've set up different projects so that I can do that even more. Like end of the year, we go to Thailand, we go to a Krabi studio, and we just have jam sessions, and whatever comes from it becomes a project.
Are you going to Krabi?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Well, you got to check out my mate, right? He's who runs a hotel out there called Pimalai. His name is Frank. Shout out to Frank. It's the best hotel in the whole of Thailand, and he's a good mate. So I'll hook you up.
You worked at Abbey Road. You should go to Krabi Road Studios.
Krabi. I used to call it Shabby Road Studios, but Krabi Road Studios. But
It's a fantastic place.
Really? I will.
It's got a villa there that you couldn't have a better life.
well, when you go out there, please go to Pimalai. I'll get him to sort you out. He's an amazing guy. He runs the whole complex. He's the manager. He's a French guy. He loves music. And there's a brilliant little beach bar called the Why Not Bar. And when I used to go there on holidays, I used to go down there, and they have a little Thai band that play on a tiny stage, but the stage looks out at the ocean. It's amazing. And I used to sit in with the band every night and play for beer. You know,
There you go.
It's like you can't get away from it. And it'd be rammed with like millionaires and backpackers. It's an amazing place. You got to go to the Why Not Bar on Pimalai, just by Pimalai, and that's on It's on Koh Lanta, which is part of, it's very close to Krabi. It's all
Very
part of the
close.
same thing. Yeah.
One of the smaller islands.
Yeah, but it's beautiful. And
I know it well.
And I say, oh wow, it's again. I'd love to hook you up with Frank. You'd love him. He's an amazing guy.
I'm taking the number from you.
He knows all the best places to go. You know.
Brilliant.
But so obviously then there's the Jocelyn Brown onto Chaka Khan. I mean, what was the process like working with Stevie Wonder? Because again, a huge icon. I mean, it doesn't get any better.
Well, people say to me, "You do a lot of covers. Why do you make so many covers?" First of all, because I'm not an idiot.
Right.
I recognize that if you do a good cover of something that belongs to you, because these songs Stevie Wonder wrote "Don't You Worry About a Thing" and put it on an album that I love, but it became it belonged to me because it was the background to my stories. It became the soundtrack of my life. So unlike people who signed to a record deal and they're told you're going to sing this song, these were my calling cards to the artists that I love. Dexter Wansel, Nights Over Egypt. Stevie Wonder, Don't You Worry About a Thing, And it carried on that way. So when I did Don't You Worry About a Thing and I went to play in Los Angeles, the House of Blues, no one told me that a guest had been invited.
Wow.
I didn't have a clue. I was on stage, my eyes was closed, and I'm playing this little guitar riff at the front of Don't You Worry About a Thing, which is and as soon as I finished that riff, a voice kicked in. I had my eyes closed and I opened and I saw Mesa wasn't standing central. She was off the edge and kind of going like this. And I heard the voice and it took me a moment because I recognized the voice and it was surreal. I forgot to play the guitar for the entire song. I looked around and there was Stevie Wonder being led to the front of the stage with a microphone and he performed it and took it, kept on saying, let's push up the keys,
Sure.
we were doing like semitones up and it's like he knew no range limit. Took us to his studio afterwards and it's always been that way every time we go to where he is. He takes us into the studio, entertains us, feeds us.
Incredible.
Sits at the piano, tells us stories. And that's the way of the real people, the real artists. George. Food, stories, memories being shared that become my memories and that become my journey. And those people are part of my journey. Although I knew that I had those dreams and that I wanted to make my dream come true, but it was a case of if you could take me back in time and told me that all this would come true, I would say, no, wake up and smell the roses, That couldn't be because it was just too many people. But I've worked with, Steve Winwood, all the people that I love.
Amazing.
I've recorded with them. I've played live with them, and there's very few that escaped me. Leon Ware. That was, he was a songwriter that I just had so much love for over the years, and I ended up, touring with him. I know. Recording with him.
I worked a few weeks ago. I was talking about you with Richard Bailey, the drummer. And we were doing a record together.
There's another one of my dreams.
Yeah, and it's fun. He played on Blow By Blow By with Beck.
That's right.
And iconic record, and he's a beautiful guy.
Gonzalez before that.
Exactly. And then a couple of years back, I was working a lot with Tony Remy because I was producing Jack Bruce, and sadly Jack died. But Tony is an amazing guy as well. And you mentioned, as we said, go back to Average White Band. I mean, Hamish is just... He's just an amazing... He's going to be back here, actually, in about 3 months. But he and I are really good friends. And I performed with him here, actually, as well, because there's an artist out here called Miro Zabirka. And I got him and Robbie McIntosh and Blair Blair Cunningham to come out from McCartney's band, and we played the O2, and and Hamish was just, we do pick up the pieces, the whole brass, and we did it down here in the club you're playing
fantastic.
in. Rocked, man. And the thing that's so wonderful about Prague and generally Czech people is that, I was saying this yesterday, they really give people a chance. Sometimes London, it's like, can be a bit judgy, the old arms folding and all that, and sort of here, there's very little cynicism. It's like they just engage in it from the get-go. As soon as you start and they feel like you're giving them something, they totally engage. Have you had the same kind of experience?
Yeah, I found them to be eclectic, first of all, because they don't only just listen to one style of music, they listen to music. Again, the good.
Yeah.
That, as long as it's good music, it doesn't matter what style it's in. And interesting conversations over the years with the people, and always great vibrations at shows, because they haven't come to kind of just sit and be cool. They get involved, and people who are involved will always raise the ante. They lift the artist. The artists are lifted to perform and give more of themselves, and that's what I love about this place.
Yeah, me too. It's very addictive over here. That kind of nearly innocence. It's as I said again, it's not cynical. It's just the love of it and engaging in it. And it's sometimes in London, not bashing us. I love London, and I'm London Irish. I've spent my whole life there. But you know what I mean.
There's a glut of possibilities in London, and that will happen in any place where there's so much going on and different things, and whatever's new, the record industry is going to be kind of pandering to it, and whether it serves the people in the long term to educate, to uplift, to elevate. It may not do that because it's trends, but there are enough cracks in that wall for various things to come through. And I can discover a lot of great young musicians.
I was going to ask you that. Is there anything at the moment that really excites you that's out there?
Yeah, there's, everywhere in the world. I mean, young people, people like Domi and J.D. Beck, they're just the tip of the icebergs, the mono neons of this world. The young people that are playing with, they remind us that yes, greatness comes all the time. There's a new flow of greatness, because sometimes it's easy to become disenchanted because the record industry is pandering to a certain sound and not necessarily nurturing the future of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever something happens where the young people are bright and shiny, but at the same time setting you up for uplifting to kind of follow your own path, inspiring as opposed to doing something which people just want to ape because they want to, they want the bucks, they want the lifestyle. It's beyond the lifestyle. Mm-hmm. There are young musicians, the Jacob Colliers of this world, the young people who are bringing to the stage and to the world something that feeds the soul, something that gives you hope. And behind that, we can live. We need that in this world. For me, Earth, Wind and Fire did that for me. Stevie Wonder did that for me. Bob Marley did that for me. The Beatles did that for me. So I have history with it. And there is the new Earth, Wind and Fire. There is the new Beatles. There is constantly, because if you live in London, all you need to do is have your eyes and your ears open.
Yeah, I've always said you can always tell the winners at the starting gate, and I think the industry, it kind of, I don't know, like you, I think I've got same kind of thing like that. It consumes me. It always has, because of the joy it brings. It's like whatever's happening in your life, no matter how bad it's getting, it's like, it'll pull you through. That sounds a little corny, but it kind of is true. It has in my life, saved my life many times, where
fact.
at the bottom, right, you know,
It's
when
a
you think
fact.
there's nowhere to go, I'm lost, and it will always
Records
pull
and
me
DJs
back.
have been saving my life for like for as long as I can remember. I saw how the thing that made me follow music in the first place is I saw how people came from the sugarcane fields, working hard in the sun, that baking sun of Mauritius, you know, being on the beach at night, cross it because the sugarcane fields run parallel to the beaches.
Sure.
They would cross over the road and go to the beach, and they would be lying beneath the trees, trying to recuperate, and some people putting oil on each other's backs and trying to soothe each other's pain. A little rum, sugarcane fields. Of course, rum is going to be not far away.
Sure.
And then the musicians would arrive, sometimes without instruments. Somebody with a bottle and a fork. And the next thing, somebody's clapping. And then somebody comes with a little hand drum, you know, a little tambourine, you know. And what I saw, what I thought was magic, because my grandfather used to make a coin disappear in his sleeve. But I didn't realize it was in his sleeve. It just used to disappear. And suddenly he'd have the coin, then it would be gone. And he taught this, I was told, is magic. And in the same way, I saw those musicians mend those broken people to the point where they would stand up and then they would begin to dance and they would become alive. And next thing, they're spinning around. So to me, that was magic. Something was happening that was extraordinary to change. That made me think, how did that happen? And that's why I followed music. I wanted to do the magic to people. I wanted to feed this, make this thing happen that made people feel better. And once you understand that for yourself, because suddenly you've listening to records that's doing that to you, you know, whether it be the Shadows playing Apache, you know, or whether it be Marvin Gaye singing Through the Grapevine and so on in your life, Sing Earth, Wind and Fire, Play with Santana, those moments feed you so much that you fully understand what you've already understood. The magic exists. The nurturing exists. But all those great artists that did that from a soulful point of view, they did more than that. They educated the planet. They gave us, they inspired us. They pushed on. The only sad thing that I've got that I feel about music now is that there is too much pushing at making money and becoming famous. Every TV show, every other TV show on every channel is somebody's trying to be famous, trying to be glamorous, you know, being richer than the other, and you know,
and the lack of patience. That was the other thing. Like listening to the TikTok generation, it's like snippets of music. It's like, this is not the way to consume music. It's a journey. That really, I find that quite depressing. The whole kind of like 2-minute songs were trying to ram everything in and ram it down people's throats. I think young people are having a hard time of it now with technology companies just as well, being a part of this, trying to force feed them. You know, where you need like anything you want to be good at, including even consuming music. It takes patience.
There's no testing ground. There's no, you know, look at the vape. You know, they've gone from cigarettes to vape. 8 and 9-year-old are vaping.
That's awful.
Okay, there's been no testing, and now they're finding out that the vapes are killing them. You know, they're giving them ulcers. 8 and 9-year-olds are having ulcers that may not be able to, they won't be able to sustain much before, and they will probably die before they're teenagers. This same thing that I see happening to the vapes and the TikTok generation, it's like I will sound like an old person trying to educate people, but you die with that mission.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give it a try.
Yeah.
But I will say the one thing I'd say for just segueing a little bit away from this, but the one thing that's good for young people at the moment is that the kind of with the major labels now, the kind of game is up in the sense of that, you know, they're a bit more educated in the music industry and like, you know, ownership of rights.
Yeah.
This whole thing like where like just lease your music.
Yeah.
Don't sell everything, give everything away. I think that at least on that side.
To be quite frank with you, for decades and for years, for as long as I can remember, people have been scammers. People have been cheating. People have been taking shortcuts. People have been taking advantage of the youth. And there's always been a pop culture which doesn't belong to me.
Right.
You know, it doesn't belong to me. It wasn't my world. I can coexist with it. I could even say, now and again say, oh, that's quite nice. But it's not going to be all the time. In the same way as my music is not going to be all the time good for the industry. But I don't need to kind of separate myself and tear myself apart to fit something. I can be myself, and I can continue to grow and shed light on others coming through. Right now, I'm looking after a dozen young people who are coming through. I'm giving them studio time. People coming out of school. I'm looking after Down syndrome musicians. I'm making sure that people in the industry that are suffering from illness have a system of like where we can actually go and do gigs and supplies and provide some money, some financial help. Trying to be a system. The thing is, as we get older, we also know how to become a system of sustaining others and ourselves. So that's the beauty, is that I hope that wherever you start in your career at, you'll be able to be at that place of being able to sustain, you know, teach someone to fish.
And also to kind of look after your rights. I know I'm banging on about that a bit, but it's a bit of I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet with major labels, the way they try and soak up all the rights of artists, and sort of 20 years down the line, you still haven't recouped, and you want to put out a compilation album, you can't get any of your tracks.
Tell me something I don't know.
You know, it's
like I still get, you know, checked that I'm owing hundreds and thousands of pounds, but I've made that company millions.
Exactly.
Where how is that possible? But that's okay, because I've got to understand what I can do for myself, and also see that doors were open that would not have been open if I hadn't had those major releases.
Sure.
So I've got to see that the possibilities of, yes, that's what the industry has always been, but there is a new ways also. One of the things about the internet and stuff is a lot of older people feel that they're being robbed and they're being taken advantage of. Wisen up and take your position in that. It's here. It's not going to change. The thing is to embrace what is going on, but having a fair degree of wisdom and knowledge of life, we can impart something beautiful. And that's the meaning of life as far as I'm concerned.
I think you're absolutely right there. I think, again, but even on a music level, I think, again, listening to your songs over the years, you know, from the very beginning, is the way that you served the song. I often say that with certain artists, but you kind of always served the song and the moment. So you kind of encapsulated that, like, which means that in 1,000 years' time they'll still play it. I think trying to sort of, if you're mentoring young people, trying to get them to understand the core of the message, you know, of what you're trying to do.
Time.
It's quite a simple thing, but you have to keep it in your mind's eye at all times if you want to create something of value.
Yeah.
And I think you've always done that, you know. And again, even going back to the beginning, not only on a musical level, but you surrounded yourself with fantastic people all the way through your career. I mean, there's literally no spots where you're not surrounded by like amazing musicians, amazing singers, like the top A-list sort of top drawer of guys. And I always say, try and surround yourself with the best people you can possibly surround yourself with. But you did that and then some, you know.
And if you go deep, sometimes you go on journeys that are totally unexpected. There's the dreaming of working with the best people, the people that fed your soul. But there's also, I remember being told that Mark Knopfler and Dire Straits are coming to our show. They're going to be, and we may be losing some musicians. And right enough, Danny Cummings, our percussionist, Chris White, our sax player, went off to do Brothers in Arms tour. But I got a chance to work with Chris White's solo album and work with Mark Knopfler. You know, he played on something that I wrote.
Wow.
So
it just goes round.
For me, it's if we believe in the rub and if we live our lives knowing that there is a rub, we've got it sussed.
That's amazing. Lastly, because I know you got to go and do some sound checking, but what have you got coming up, Bluey? What's the next exciting thing?
We've got the new album, Incognito album, which is going to drop. It's going to be a double album.
Brilliant.
Double CD, double vinyl, and it's going to be 16 tracks on digital. We've got a world tour following it. Next year, we've got various cruises and world tours, a world tour planned. We've got lots of dates coming up. I'm going to, with Citrus Sun, one of my other Incognito break-offs, going to Japan next month after this little semi-European tour, then coming back and going to States again, probably doing end of the year at Ronnie Scott's.
Great.
And then going to Japan again with Incognito, this time not Citrus. Traveling, embracing.
Having fun.
Looking, seeing, breathing, tasting, because it all goes into the melting pot that is our music. So as long as I'm living life to the full and I'm seeing things that is exciting and living in a life of example for those that are around me, because now my kids are big and there's lots of little children that are around me and they're watching what Uncle Bluey is doing. You know, I'm still waiting to be a granddad, which won't be long, I don't think. And to be of service. Because the one thing that my grandfather told me when I was 5 years old, and I told him that I was going to do the magic, which he said, no, you're going to be doing the music. I said, okay. I'm going to be a musician. He taught me the word musician. He said, whatever you do, I know you're going to travel the world, you're going to see places, because he believed me. Some grandparents are very good at sussing out children, and even if they don't really know the truth about what's going to happen to that child, they're encouraging to the full extent. But he said one thing that stuck with me, and I didn't understand it at the time. He said, we're here to be of service. So if you learn, whatever you're doing, be humble enough to be a servant. And then I learned the word servant, and I thought, oh, somebody who's going to cook your food, who's going to be doing your clothes and stuff. Then I really learned the word service, to be there for people that need you, to be there, to be on hand, to provide, to serve. Then I met Leon Ware at an important time in my life, and he said he echoed my granddad's words. He said, he leant over to me. We were playing in Paris. He leant over to me and he said, remember to be of service. We're here to serve. Isn't it wonderful that we can serve? And the hairs on my back went, phew. And I knew that that's the rest of my life now. I'm here to serve.
Well, that was amazing, Bluey. I mean, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a great way to finish it off. And thank you.
Love you, my brother.
Bluey, love you, man.
This is a little tune about a little bird. I was watching television and I saw this little bird going from flower to flower and hovering, and I thought to myself, this is beautiful. I want to write a little piece of music to it, and I began to sing to sing along to the movements of the bird. In the morning, I woke up and I ran to my friend's house, Richard Bull, who's a really good programmer and whose drums and bass ended up being on that track. But I had this idea in my head and I didn't want to lose it, because you know how it is with musicians. We have an idea, then we wake up in the morning and it's gone in the ether and it never comes back. But because I had the image of the bird on the screen, I remembered, and on the bus I was thinking, and I sang that to the programmer, Richard, as soon as I came through the door. I said, let's not talk about food, let's not talk about anything, here's this idea, and it ended up being this little tune. Of course, that was the story of the hummingbird, which in Spanish is the Colibri.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bluey. Charlie, thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Wonderful end.